Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're going well. Welcome to the Mind and Machine F1 podcast. With me is Phillipe and Ian, as you can see. You may have met Phillipe if you joined us last time. Phillipe is the mental mindset performance coach. And with me is Ian Wright. Ian's had an extensive career in Formula One, worked with some championship winning teams in vehicle performance. We'll start with you, Ian. Welcome to the channel. How are you going? And yeah, tell us in your own words about a little bit of your line of work and some of the experience that you've had in F1, because the audience might not be familiar with you. So yeah, just fill us in on what's been going on.
Hi everybody. I was invited to join the podcast by Phillipe and Martin, and as Martin said, I've worked in Formula One for about 28 years. I've had a couple of years working in IndyCar and NASCAR. It's always been about vehicle performance, which is my area of expertise. When I started, there was nobody doing this, so no books, no help. But I have a physics degree, so I had to use that to try and understand the vehicle. Since my time of learning it myself, which means I have lots of areas I don't understand and don't know about, other people have come along, written some really good books, and there's really good ways for students to learn about vehicle performance, certainly vehicle dynamics. Vehicle performance is another layer on top. So I view vehicle performance as the application of vehicle dynamics. So vehicle dynamics is the technical side of how a suspension moves and so on, how the forces are reacted. But vehicle performance is all about bringing everything together and deliver a fast-moving car. I started at Mclaren, so I started right at the top, so sort of in 1990, and we were winning, and then we did some things that I was able to help them continue to win the championships because no one was doing anything like what I was doing, so that was kind of quite handy. But for me, it was a massive learning experience. When you first get in, there's just, you know, so little, and there's always star names around. It's quite an experience, I can tell you. And then went to BAR when British American Racing was formed. And I stayed there, Honda F1, Braun GP, Mercedes F1, and then trip to the States, and then a few years in Sauber. And then I retired 5 years ago because of some health problems. But in that time, I learned a lot. So it was a great experience. I've been very, very lucky. No one would employ me now, I'm sure, in F1, and yet I have done so many things and delivered so many things that have helped all these teams win championships.
So when you were at Mclaren in, let's say, the mid-90s to late 90s, did you have crossover with Adrian Newey? Did you meet him? Did you learn anything from him?
Yes, I did. Adrian joined while I was still there. So I think he joined in 97. Yeah, he joined in 97 and I left in 98. So I had a little bit of experience with Adrian.
So you and Adrian built that weapon, that 98 McLaren.
So the 98 McLaren was a weapon for a variety of reasons. But one of the main ones was the whole brake steer device, which was a very interesting device, which had been run a bit in 97 to get used to it. But in 97, it was banned almost immediately because it was so powerful. But yes, Adrian Newey and his aero did elevate McLaren from being a car that could have won to a car that was going to win. And yeah, those were interesting times.
Okay, we'll get your thoughts on whether or not you think the green Aston Martin will be championship winning car come 26. Phillipe, for those of you that didn't meet you last time, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite an introduction, Ian. I don't think I'll be able to follow up much.
It's hard to compete, mate. It's hard to compete.
Right? Yeah, hey everyone. Hello again to the people from last week. But yeah, so my name's Phillipe. I'm a mindset performance coach. And essentially, I work with athletes and business professionals across the globe, and I help them master their minds to unlock peak performance when it truly matters. So my focus is essentially on helping them conquer their mental hurdles that hold them back. So that could be anything like self-doubt, overcoming performance inconsistencies, or transforming negative self-talk into something a bit more positive. I've worked for over a decade in the corporate world, and I've spent over the last 2 years freelancing, guiding clients from all sorts of different industries across the globe to achieve their absolute best. If you'd like to know more, then you can find out my socials in the description of this live. So feel free to reach out after the show.
Mate, I'm drowning in quality here. You know, we got vehicle performance, this, mental performance, that. What a lineup. All right. So look, guys, I'm sure you guys are keen to ask questions. We've got a few things that we want to cover off with regards to recent events. And we'll jump into those now. We'll have a bit of a break halfway through. We'll take some questions and go on. So there will be a short break in about 45 minutes time, and we'll crack on from there. Let me start the show. Let's talk about Kimi Antonelli. He was seen crying after qualifying yesterday, tears falling down his face. Lewis went to console him after qualifying as well. It comes off the back of 2 Q1 exits. He was out first in the sprint quali, and he was out again in the main quali. If I can just reel off some of the results in the last 7 or 8 races. A DNF in Emilia-Romagna. Nico Rosberg spoke about this, and he brought his Bologna soccer team and all his schoolmates. And Nico said, man, just sack all that off, right? 18th in Monaco, DNF in Spain, 3rd in Canada when George won, obviously. DNF in Austria, he took out Max. DNF in Britain, he was wiped out by Hadjar. And 16th last time out this weekend as well. So it's been a bit of a downward trajectory. My first question is to Ian, it's a complicated one. Is it Kimi? Is it the team? Is it the support network? Is it the coaching? Is it the mentoring? Is it the nurturing? I mean, you worked at Mercedes. What's from a structure point of view and from where Kimi sits in the team and who might be around him, what do you think's going on, and where do you think the best next steps forward would be for Mercedes with Kimi?
Okay, that is certainly a lengthy question and a tough one to answer. Certainly, Mercedes have got a lot of experience of dealing with drivers and helping them deliver their best. But, and there's a big but, Kimi Antonelli has come in with a lot of support, but who knows, is the support really working? Is it doing what he really needs? And I'm sure everybody's doing their best there, but actually supporting drivers is very difficult. And what I've seen elsewhere is that there'll be, for example, a race engineer who does a bit of braking analysis, braking point analysis. They do a bit of racing line analysis, and they'll talk to the driver about all these things. And if you're a young driver and you've got an experienced race engineer saying you need to brake 10 meters later or whatever it is, you're probably going to listen to them and do it. And it might not be appropriate at all. So there are lots of factors in there, and I think that's probably an important part of it. But then there's always how do you set your mind up to go racing? How do you set your mind up for that session? And that's the kind of area where I think both Phillipe and Martin, but Phillipe, I think that's really an area where you probably have more to say even than Martin does.
Yeah, for sure. So me and Martin were actually messaging over the weekend. Apologies again, Martin, on my late reply on that. We kind of talked about the cause of why it happened and why Kimi was crying. And I think a lot of it came down to kind of helplessness almost, and it kind of, feeling helplessness. He's obviously been trying very hard. I totally agree with your point, Martin, as well. With the Italian GP, when he brought his whole soccer team and everything. I mean, benefit of the doubt, he's a young kid. He kind of, it's one of his home GPs. He wants to bring his mates and everything. But yeah, clearly, I think he spoke about it after that. It was it's probably the wrong decision to do that. His focus should have been on driving and doing things of that nature. I think there is maybe a kind of discussion that could be had around Martin's previous point from last week about is the kind of mental pressure coming from a downstream of technical, not inability, because we know Kimi's got enormous amounts of talent, but could it be that he's struggling to deal with the car a bit? Have there been changes to that? So yeah, I'm not sure, Martin, if you want to add anything to that from a technical perspective that you think he could change.
Look, it's hard. It's really hard for me to be able to say. I've always said on the channel, like when I look at Max's driving, it's so perfect that it's very easy for me to spot the weaknesses. And when I look at other drivers, there are too many areas where I think like it's just hard to put a finger on one thing. It could be multiple things. I don't know what to say really. The only thing I'll say is like the difference between champions in any sport and not champions, it's not what they do or what makes them great. In fact, it's what they don't do. It's the stuff they don't bring to the table. They don't bring their school friends. They don't bring their soccer friends. They're not doing the social media. They're not picking up a 5-iron and playing golf in between races. Mention no names, Lando. They're just looking straight forward at the job. Do you know what I mean? And when I read off those results, they're not great. Now, Ian, you know, like I say, you know, I guess the workings of the team or the structure of the team. Like, how was it, I guess, allowed to happen that these distractions and friends and stuff could come? I don't want to sound Debbie Downer and be harsh here. Bring your friends, bring your family and everything. But like, how is it, is there not the right person that says, Kimmy, come this way, bro, go back to work?
Right, well, that would be Toto Wolff who would have to do that. That's where they leave it. The race engineers will deal with the drivers at a very local level, but the bigger picture decisions, that's down to Toto. And yeah, obviously he's not addressing that, and he's giving the drivers the freedom. I guess Lewis was granted a lot of freedom, and that was because he had delivered, and so he was saying, "Look, I can do more, and I know I'm going to go and do this," and he did it.
And at that point, it's fair enough. Yeah,
it is exactly. It's totally fair enough at that point. But when you're a youngster, you've got to focus 100% on doing this, because if you don't, you will never get there.
Yeah. Now, Phillipe, Bernie. Yeah, Bernie in the podcast, whatever the Sky Sports podcast that they put out today, she raised the point: are the extra TCP, you know, testing prior cars worth it? Are they good for him? Maybe he needs a break. Maybe he needs to step away. And I'm quoting here: do whatever his hobbies are and get his mindset in the right place. Now, you guys know my standpoint on this. My audience know this. Picking up a golf club to get your mind off the sport does not help your technique in turn 8, long corner of that's all garbage, cuz you got to cut that out. There's more work that needs to be done. In fact, it's my advice would be the opposite of what Bernie is saying. In that summer break, it's not time to jump on a jet ski. Like, you've got to get your head down and try to understand the problems of the first part of the season. Phillipe, how is this a mentality or recommendation? Like, could you imagine a tennis player losing a match and saying, you know what, if I just played a bit of soccer and did a triathlon, did a bit of cycling, or just took my mind off things with a bit of cooking, maybe I'll come out and play better next year in Wimbledon. It doesn't work like that, mate. It's inputs and outputs, surely.
Yeah, no, look, I totally agree with you, Martin. I think it's interesting Bernie says that. I'm just going to share my screen, so hopefully you guys can see that.
Tell me what's going on.
So yeah, look, so we're going to work at this in a kind of anti-clockwise way. So we're going to start here in the top left where you can see it's purple, and then we're going to go back down that way. So yeah, I'll end with the point that you mentioned about Bernie, because you guys can probably already see it on the right-hand side, but that's going to be my final point, but I'll come to that. So I just want to shed some light from a mindset perspective about how I would coach Kimmy and how I'd kind of work with him after seeing him, you know, obviously upset. And, you know, Martin, you reeled off his recent performances, and obviously they're not great. But I think the fact we saw him crying, you know, it's obviously not a good sign. We don't want to see anyone cry. I do think there are drivers in the past that have probably felt like this, but probably not showing it on camera. You know, again, Kimmy's still a young lad, so he's learning. He's learning the ropes and everything that comes with it. But I do think it's actually a good sign that he was crying. I think it shows that he cares and that he wants to do better. You know, a lot of people will kind of hide away from their emotion, not show it. For us, obviously, it was clear as day, rather, to see that he was crying. But I do think it is a good sign, and I do think it shows that, yes, he's feeling that pain, but he'll start to learn over these next couple of weeks and days about what it takes to keep pushing the limits from kind of anywhere to get to the level we know he can be. So again, I've kind of shedded light on this, but we've all seen other drivers go through something similar. I mean, you know, we can reel off the greats, the Lewises, the Maxes, the Vettels, etc. But they've all had their kind of not so good patches, and clearly Kimmy's going through that right now. So it's to remind him that, you know, you're not unique to this. This has happened to other drivers. And it's not the end of the world. And again, this comes into a point I'll go into in a bit as well, that the dip doesn't define you. It's really about how you respond to this dip. We've all had bad performances from time to time, but it's about how we respond. From a technical perspective as well, I probably would get him to work with the team to just investigate where to improve. Again, you can do a lot of mindset work, but this goes to your point, Martin, about you know, playing golf and whatnot isn't going to help. But what will help is, you know, hitting a simulator, speaking to your engineers, trying to find if there's anything that's changed to the cars that maybe Kimmy's having to change his driving style or overcompensate in a particular area. But yeah, work with the team, use all that resource that you've got to try and get as much information from all the data that you have. Again, yeah, just remind him that the dip doesn't define him. It's about how he responds. And I think to Bernie's point, I think, look, we've got one more race, the Hungarian GP, and then we've got the summer break. So it's a long time off. My key to him would be, from a mindset perspective, is just don't let this consume you. So I do agree with Bernie's point to an extent of, let loose, go see your family, enjoy some home time, some downtime, but balance that. So don't get overconsumed with relaxing and taking it easy, but also don't get overconsumed by these results. I'd be talking to him about the next race mentality and the next lap mentality. Like, unless he makes a big enough mistake that it does take him completely out of qualifying or the race, just keep reminding him that, you've got a new lap coming up, or a new day's coming up. It's a fresh start. Use that. But yeah, just don't let it consume you, because time away from the track and time away to not kind of rectify those problems and issues, it can eat away at anyone. So it's, finding a right balance of downtime to kind of rejuvenate, recharge your batteries, come with a fresh mindset, a fresh pair of legs, everything else, but also work with the team, try and figure things out, maybe work on the simulator, try different things, push yourself out your comfort zone to really try and bring the best out.
Guys, I wanted to play you a piece from Rob Smedley talking about rookies. Let me play that to you now. Give me a second, and then we'll react to it. But he was talking about Franco, so give me a sec. I'll bring it up now.
Started to come, didn't they, later in the year? I feel he's got unfinished business, and funnily enough, Rob, he could do with an experienced race engineer like yourself just guiding him through these next moments, couldn't he?
Yeah, that is what I think rookies benefit from more than anything, is having people close to them in their inner circle, if you like. And one of those key figures is the race engineer, but can also guide them through the bits that they don't know. Because you can't blame a rookie for not knowing what they don't know, right? It's just part of life. So I think that having an experienced team around them is going to be paramount importance to be able to get this right. It can completely change like how the team has to work, because the team is now having to kind of tidy up the mistakes, or even be proactively thinking about what mistakes the rookie's going to make and how you can, mitigate for them. And that's why the performance is not always there between the rookie and the experienced driver. So yeah, any kind of injection of experience, injection of like mitigation for the mistakes that are going to happen, that's going to be absolutely key to getting Franco up to speed in these races.
Yeah, so super interesting. And like, what's your take on that, Ian? Like, I think Rob Smedley is one of the better race engineers, because like for the longest time I've been saying race engineering, it's only two things: it's empathy and communication. And I thought in Rob saying there, the empathy and communication piece was spot on. It's like, you can't blame a rookie for not knowing, but you also need the right people to be able to get the most out of them. So like with Franco and that, so like what would you do then with Kimi, for example?
Okay, I probably should add, before we go any further, race engineers have a massive amount of responsibility at the track. They have to ensure the car is safe, it's reliable, everybody's doing the right jobs at the right time. They do have a very complicated job, and they actually do need help with this. But I agree, Rob is absolutely right there. I'd go a bit further and integrate what all both of you have said and what Rob is suggesting. The way I see it is somewhat a bit different, but it's an extension of what you're talking about. So what I would want to do is to take Kimi and perhaps, let's say, for example, the two of you and his race engineer, and you'd go and you'd run on the simulator and you'd do resilience training. From my perspective, resilience training would mean, let's give you scenarios where the car suddenly done something different. How do you manage your expectations? How do you manage the car? How would you deal better with that in future? And then you look at the mindset side, which is where obviously the two of you come in. But keep on training in that area, because at the moment he's going out in a car which actually, these cars are very unpredictable, and a slight gust of wind, anything that subtly changes a car can have big impacts on the handling, and then he doesn't know how to deal with it. Whereas you can train the guy in the simulator. It's not perfect, it's not totally realistic, but he then gets to deal with all these unusual circumstances. Hence my comment, resilience training. And I think that covers everything that the three of us have ever worked on, but not integrated in a fashion, which is what I think it should be.
And so this is the thing, that wouldn't you recommend to do that in the break as opposed to the downtime and the hobbies?
Absolutely.
I'd be sleeping next to the simulator.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Guys, if you had a question, thought, or comment, drop it in the chat for us. On Kimi Antonelli, I'm just reading as I go through. Ridiculous comment. Sorry, that is the name of the person. It's not a ridiculous comment. His name is ridiculous. Sorry, yeah, ridiculous. I think taking a break and focusing on hobbies makes sense for a very experienced driver that has had success in the past. It's probably to your point, Ian. What else have we got? Max Flashout says, how much sponsor responsibilities, appearances, track days, signings, etc. hurt young drivers? Again, Max, I think it goes back to what I said. It's the champion mentality. It's not what you do, it's what you don't do. Everything you've mentioned does not contribute to lower lap time. And my philosophy is, if it does not contribute to lower lap time, mate, just park it. Like, it's just, it's as simple as that. And Nico Rosberg, because Bernie and Nico were talking about this in the Sky today, and Bernie's like, well, how much should he be doing? And Nico was like this. 0, don't do any of it. So yeah, there you go. I have a question. Why did Lando lose the lead instantly? I will come back to that, Pickle. And I think I spoke about that a little bit in my post race. But Merd says, yeah, Norris needs to get it together, otherwise he's going to lose everything. So there's a lot of chat about Lando in here as well, which is interesting. Tanners, this is a theme in all sports. They prioritize potential and not results. Oof, that's a big one, because how many times, and Nico said it today in the podcast, he goes, he's a generational talent. I'm like, is he? I don't know. I don't know. Doesn't that remain to be seen?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and that's a great question, actually, or a great statement, because yeah, I think they often do. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, right? They've got so much talent, so if you don't give them the chance in a seat like that, do you risk losing them? Basically, it's kind of the Alpine Oscar Piastri situation, where he was the reserve driver, and there was the whole thing. Alpine put out that statement that we've signed him. So I think, yeah, I think there's a fine balance. Obviously, yes, there's a talent. We know Kimi's got talent. To your point, Martin, I agree. We don't know he's a generational talent.
Generational talent, bro. It's a big word.
It's a massive
he's in there with the
statement,
Sennas, the Schumachers, the Hamiltons, and the Verstappens. And what's he got? A podium.
Yeah. So I think for sure that there is a balance you've got to strike, and yeah, on Kimi's side, he's got to obviously start showing those performances, which we probably know he's got in him, but he needs to iron out a few things, and I'm sure he'll start showing that talent sooner rather than later.
Yeah, don't take me the wrong way. Like, he might be a generational talent, but we can park those words until the work gets done and we get there. Do you know what I mean? Ian, did you have anything to add on that? The comment here, I'll just add the question here is, this is a theme in all sports. They prioritize potential.
Yeah. I mean, let's just talk generally about the grid and say that if there is anybody who I feel is going to be a generational talent, it is Oscar Piastri, which is back to your point, Phillipe. He has focused so well on what he's doing. So he's an example of what we've been talking about. And
he just flies under the radar, Oscar. Yeah, he gets no publicity. Yeah.
No publicity, just gets in there, does the job. He's not fazed by Max Verstappen. He just does it. And it's very good. And he is awesomely quick. I mean, he drags time out where other people don't. And that is extremely difficult to do. Yeah. So to do that so early in his career is a very big thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the question, which I've now forgotten.
So it was about this is a theme in all sports. They prioritize potential and not necessarily results. Like, Kimi has a lot of potential. He's being prioritized for his potential, not for what Yeah.
Yeah, but that's playing a hoping game, isn't it? Well, we hope that he delivers, whereas with someone like Oscar or Lewis, I mean, they just got on with it and did it. So
Yeah, the thing you
and
mentioned
Max as well.
about
Max has been very good at he has balanced both, but he has been very good at delivery.
the thing you mentioned about Oscar is interesting because in the sprint quali, which was just on the Saturday, he did that 45.0 lap record. What was it? No, sorry. What was the lap time? It wasn't 45.0, but what was it? It was 40.5? 40.5. He did that 40.5, and then Lando was a little bit on the back foot. Then you see Lando get up to speed and take main pole. You know what the lap time was? 40.5. And it's like Oscar just pulled it out like that. And Oscar also qualified for the main race on a 140.5 as well. So like exactly to your point, Ian, to be able to jump on a track like Spa and smash out the quickest time that car is probably capable of is quality.
Well, also with Oscar, and it's something that we've talked about independently of this podcast, but Oscar builds his race event, and this is a very good point that you've made, Martin. It's so clear he works at it, and he will keep on getting better during the race, and that's why I see him as being such a good racer in the end. Because when it comes to the race, he's got it all sorted, and he's generally going to beat Lando. Not always, but generally, I put money on him being more likely to win because of that approach. And to be able to chuck in a lap like that in qualifying before the race, that shows he's really high up there before the race. So yeah, very impressive.
It speaks to the preparation. You don't just jump on the
It
Spa
does.
track and both of you guys are nodding strongly, right? How can
Yes.
you just land on the track and whack out a 40.5 on a sprint quali? You've done some prep to be able to do that.
Yeah, he certainly has.
I wanted to share with you another audio extract on that Alex Albon's spoken recently about driver coaches. Let's play the clip and then we'll react to it in a second.
Engineering team the same? I mean, I heard that is there now a driver coach at Williams, for example?
Yeah, you've done your research. There's
That's a new for
that's a new
25.
thing. So for example, Ferrari had a driver coach, and I think they had a driver coach each, Charles and Carlos, last year. So we adopted that. I would say I'm still in my kind of discovery phase because I haven't had one in a long time.
How does the driver coach vary from the performance engineer?
Some teams do it differently. Some teams have their performance engineer is also kind of a driver coach. They kind of do both. Us, it's a little bit more split up. So what the driver coach will do is he's purely on lines, driving styles, compromises. So for example, Suzuka Sector 1, where placing the car and things like that. Whereas the performance engineer is looking kind of more about optimizing the balance of the car. So that's more around like, okay, you have this snap of oversteer. Here, try this on the car. So you could imagine that actually having two parts of information, you can attack it in both ways, and you can kind of choose, do both, do one kind of thing, and go about it in different ways.
Have you found it useful?
I have. I've seen the benefits from it for sure. It's almost like as a driver, you have so much information coming at you that you have to be really selective with what you pick and choose, because sometimes it can just be information overload. It's a lot about communication. It's useful to a point.
Is, just as I hear Alex finish that off, is it possible that Kimi has too much information coming his way?
I would say absolutely, and I'm sure it's a concern at Mercedes. How do you manage all these people who are helping the driver when they need to know just what they need to know at the right point? It's the right information at the right point in time, and you hear it over the radio with people on the grid. It's giving drivers the wrong information at the wrong time in the wrong way, and that causes problems. So yes, I think you're probably right there.
Phillipe, and maybe Ian as well, both of you guys, I'd like your input on this. Alex spoke about driver coach and the way the question was framed. Like, I've heard you've got a driver coach. Is that right? Like, do you know what I mean? Is F1 like, we give the sport so much credit for being so progressive, and the cars are the latest in cutting edge technology, and there's new materials and lighter and this and that. But then now we're like talking about a coach being something new and special and innovative, and that we took some learnings from Ferrari when Carlos came over. And like, I'm just curious to know, like, are they stuck in their ways a little bit, or is it arrogance, or is there a reason that they're not they're so quickly progressive on the car, but so far behind on the human performance side? Or I just don't know where that sits, because every other sport has had coaches mate, since I've been born back in 1991. So like, I'm trying to understand, are they stuck in their ways? Are they not accepting? How come all of a sudden coaches are like the new thing?
Yeah, I think I'll let Ian shed some light after my thoughts, because he's been there, done that. He'll be able to definitely give us a lot of experience from there. I think from my point, I think they are kind of stuck in their ways. It does seem to be a bit of an anomaly with getting coaches and getting help. I'm not sure why it's kind of viewed in that sense. I mean, to be fair, hearing that, I think some commendment has probably got to go to James and the job he's doing at Williams. We have seen a bit of a turnaround there. It probably is due to like changing low-hanging fruit, changing the culture, maybe making it a bit more open. From a mindset perspective, I think having a culture where it's kind of flat, so regardless of job title, anyone can share ideas, anyone can speak to anyone. A willingness to learn is a big one. So I guess from a sense, to Albon and Williams as a wider team, I suppose it's a step in the right direction. I'm sure we probably all support that. I'm not sure what your views are, Ian or Martin, on that.
I thought it was interesting the way Alex worded it. It was almost as if he was kind of embarrassed that somebody knew, or that he didn't want people to know. Either of those two cases I felt were appropriate for him there. And because it's unusual, because drivers, in my experience, have said, I don't want anybody else in my head, I'm not going to have a driver coach or mindset coach, whatever you want to call it, I'm not having anybody doing that. And so there's been that tradition of doing that. And then so a youngster goes to a team, the guy at the top who's there says, no, I'm not having a driver coach. So the younger guy says, well, I'm not having a driver coach either.
100% agree,
whereas you look at the team as a whole. So when I was at British American Racing, and this was 2002, 2003, David Richards turned up and he said, look, you've got some good people here, but we need to get rid of 20% of the workforce. And he did, and we came out of it. And then he said, right, all you leaders are going on management training courses. And so we did, and it was, oh, do we have to? Because we thought we knew it all. And of course we didn't. So we went on these management courses, and there's a lot about the things that you're talking about for the drivers. It was the same for us, because we had to learn more how to work with other people, how to work together as part of a team. And it was very effective. And I thought, right. And so 2004 was when BAR Honda jumped up from a poor fifth to a very strong second, because we did a lot of things together, and it really worked, this management training. And I felt the same was needed for the drivers, but I've never been able to persuade anybody. So,
No, like,
so Phillipe, with the mindset side, I could see that being extremely important, but I see that even lower down the priority scale than the kind of stuff that Martin's talking about.
no, I agree with you. Go on, Phillipe. Yeah.
No, you go ahead, Martin.
I was just thinking like that. You said he's either embarrassed or surprised, and I was just like, still don't know this person's name. Who is, and I agree with you, Ian. I think like, yeah, there is a level of embarrassment, and then, but at the end of the day, like, and this is my thing to Phillipe, like, why are they embarrassed? Like, a tennis player would never be embarrassed to have a coach. It's just part of their team.
Yeah, again, I think Ian could probably shed a bit more light from the culture inside the paddock, but I think, I just think it's the kind of, it is just the culture, I guess, inside of F1. It seems like they want to, and I think, Martin, to be fair, you've probably spoken on this in previous lives that you've done that. Drivers, they don't want to probably have that kind of demeanor of, oh, I need help, or they want to be classed as I am the 20 best on the grid in the world, rather. So why would I need help? And I think that's a really it's a good insight, Ian, there where you mentioned him being embarrassed, because I think I kind of subconsciously took that on board, but didn't consciously think about it. And it does speak volumes, and it's a shame, really, to be honest. I think there's so much to grow in all sorts of areas within F1. Like for me, obviously, it'd be the mental side of things, but Martin, obviously, weekly you're sharing, racing lines and all sorts of technical knowledge. Where I mean, for me and my business, I'm open to any ideas. I think why not be open to growth, right? Of course, is make sure that it's coming from a verified source. You don't want to just listen to any old person kind of sharing their armchair opinion. But yeah, I think it is the culture. I do think it has it kind of has this whole demeanor of we're the 20 best drivers. We don't need help.
Well, I'd add to that in that it kind of pervades across the whole of the factory. So whilst we did all this management training, it was very good. They then kept on trying to repeat it. And of course, you send a lot of innovative, experienced engineers and repeat the same old stuff. You end up getting bored with it. But one key point here I would say is that when I left Mercedes and went to the States, I thought, well, this would be interesting because I love working abroad and so on. But what I found was that I learned new stuff there. And then I went to Sauber, and you say, well, hang on, they're an almost back of the grid team. But I've been at back of the grid team to help take them to the front before. So that was nothing new to me. But I learned a whole load of new stuff there as well. And for anybody who sits in the same position doing broadly the same thing, you're not in that forced learning environment. And that's why I view these things as so important. You've got to be innovative. You've got to be open to new ideas and to change. And if you're not, probably you shouldn't be working in Formula One.
Can I just get both of your thoughts? Ian, obviously from a vehicle performance side, and Martin, yours from a technical. Albon mentioned he doesn't kind of want an overload of information. And this is obviously going to be completely driver preference about how much they get. I mean, one of the ones that kind of gets a lot of spotlight, probably for the bad reasons in the past, was Max and GP, because of Max can be so direct and straightforward. But I think Max and GP have a great way of communication. It's like direct, it's to the point. I think Max, though, is obviously someone who likes a lot of information. His racing IQ, I think, is probably better than most on the grid, bar probably Lewis or Alonso. So he can probably compartmentalize that information and use it as he's driving. It's just interesting. Obviously, Albon said, I don't want an overload of information. So yeah, I just wanted to get it from both your points, from your respective backgrounds. What do you think is best? I know it's driver preference, but what would you guys want? And I guess what helps you guys perform in what you're doing?
Look, I'll start. I'm not sure what the sources are. Like you said, Ian, provided it comes from a credible source. Now, if you've got like an engineer, be it performance or a race engineer, commenting to the driver on driving technique, from my side, from the driver's side, it's a bit humiliating. You don't want an engineer to tell you how to drive. They don't get it. They don't understand what it's like. That little bear you see behind me is an engineering graduate teddy bear. so I can tell you that being an engineer, like, they don't get it. They just can't understand the feeling of what it's like and what the drivers are trying to achieve with their lines and stuff. So then it would be like there's too much, and they lose credibility when they give an input. Exactly the example that I spoke about in my post-race. Do you remember they came back to Oscar and they said, there's an opportunity at turn 5, and he was racing against Max in the sprint. There was no opportunity at turn 5. He was right up in the slipstream, losing all the downforce. Whoever said that has lost credibility now and trust, because next time he gives an input or piece of information to Oscar, Oscar's going to be like, you're that same guy that told me there was an opportunity at turn 5 when there was no opportunity. So I think it's like but then, and also Max was getting some feedback, and there's a reel on my socials where they're in the sim together playing the F1 game, and one of the guys recommends him a tighter line into a long corner of constant radius, exactly what I've been saying Max needs to do. And then they ask Max, do you take that on board? And Max says, it depends if it makes sense to me. But again, going back to my point, I feel like it's because it came from that guy who's just his mate, sim driving mate, as opposed to, no, this is actually an instruction from a professional specialist driver coach. Like, this is the way you need to go. I think who it comes from carries a lot of weighting, but maybe Ian, you can shed more light on that.
Yeah, so on the technical side, they had a practice beforehand in the simulator, and so and the drivers will be informed that, yeah, turn 6, you need to back off here at this stage of the race because of this reason and that reason and so on, and you can do lift and coast. Incidentally, a minor point about lift and coast, once you're used to it, lift and coast you can do and almost lose 0 lap time. It's actually very, very well done nowadays. So yeah, that does work really well nowadays. But back to the technical input, there is little that they can add at that point. They're adding more commentary and so on, and it needs to be the things that they don't know. So-and-so has gone off on turn 7, there may be yellows by the time you get round, all those kind of things. Those are useful bits of information, but not telling him that, yes, you can brake 10 meters later or whatever. That's just, yeah. Or even the strategic side, which is exactly what you've alluded to. The race engineers seem to do this, but I'm not convinced that they are the right people to do this. Their job is to maintain the gaps, maintain the overview of what's happening in the race. That's it.
So even Leclerc came on the radio in the race in Spa and he goes, mate, every time I need information, you're not there. And every time I don't need information, you just smashing me with stuff I don't care about. So it goes back to your point, Phillipe, of like exactly, like it's just, and obviously we know the Ferrari race engineers, empathy and communication are not one of their strengths. They might be great technically, like IQ, but when it comes to EQ, which is their assessment on race day, understanding what the driver needs, no more, no less delivery at the right time on the right lap, and nurturing the race and race management and driver management. Like I thought in Spain, it was a bad one from GP when Max said, what have we got a penalty for? And do you know, GP delivered that information that pushed Max over the cliff. And then he's like, stuff this, do you know what I mean? Whereas GP could have said like, yeah, I think he could have managed that a little bit better. I think it was with regards to letting George through or not. That whole, you remember that, Phillipe?
Yeah. I do think that was such an interesting one, and I agree. That's definitely one where, you know, GP's probably not done his best there, and I think this kind of stems back to a slight tangent, but it kind of makes me think of when Jonathan Wheatley left. We know that he was in kind of control of all of those things. He kind of knew that handbook inside out. So had he been there, could they have gone to him to speak to kind of understand the rules inside out and give that information to Max? That's I mean, we know F1 is milliseconds, right? You're talking seconds or, you know, a couple of seconds, you're already too late. So having that kind of input and using Wheatley's brain to kind of come out with an answer to say, no, we don't need to give that place back. But yeah, I agree that definitely tipped Max over the edge because he knew he technically kind of wasn't in the wrong, so he didn't need to give that place back. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And a general point I would add to all of this is that, so obviously I come from the vehicle performance perspective, and we have a very good grip on what performance is, how it works, what you need to do to deliver it, how you get it out of the car at the track. But the big factor is always the driver, and that's why I remain convinced, and I'll rephrase that, I've become even more convinced from talking to Martin and now talking to you, Phillipe, that side of it is where there's much more gain to be made than putting a little bit of downforce on the car, which gains you that much lap time.
That's the big point, Ian. Big point.
Exploit the vehicle better, that's that much lap time more. So it's such a big thing what you two do.
That's a massive point. Yeah,
that you're not in there doing this, able to do this.
That's a massive point because the teams will spend millions and research this for a new front wing, which gives you 0.01 or 1/10 or half a tenth or whatever. My safety car restart information cost Lando 7 points. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's something a new front wing or new suspension just won't be able to give you. Like, that's gone. Like,
Agreed.
That is £1 million thrown away, millions of pounds thrown away just because they didn't listen.
Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah. So that's why I do see it as, absolutely invaluable.
All right. Listen, guys, we're going to take a break at this point in the live stream. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Ask your questions in the chat. I'll leave the stream running. So we'll be back then. Welcome back, guys. We're back from the break and we got a few questions. Let's have a look and see what we got. Barbara's got the first one. I'll bring it up on the screen for everyone to see. Barbara, I just brought up the wrong question. Okay, so Barbara, it says, I added some questions on the top a few messages ago. It was about Rosberg and Lando. So let me just scroll up and see if I can find that one, Barbara. I think it had to do with that Nico Rosberg reached out to Lando Norris for a little bit of help once upon a time on the mental side, because apparently Nico understands completely what Lando's going through and offered some sort of help. Obviously, we don't know the details, whether that was his help or actually, hey, I know a guy with the sports psychologist. Yeah, so the question is about that and presumably what Lando's response. Let me just read it out. Offering coaching to Lando, yet to my knowledge, Lando has not reached back.
Yeah, I remember hearing that as well. I can't remember after what GP it was, but Nico Rosberg, did a whole kind of point on the mental side of it, and it obviously perked my ears straight away. I even did a post on it, to be fair, because having Nico talk about it is obviously massive. And we talked about it last week as well, and there's a lot of Nico talking about this elsewhere. So if anyone's interested, research it, because Nico really does talk about the power of the mental side. I mean, he's up against Lewis Hamilton, so he needed everything he could have done. To Martin's point, where we talked about pushing away, unnecessary things. I think Martin, you said he slept in a different bed to his missus or his partner, which is a big one. I know he stopped cycling to stop the muscle mass in his legs, and obviously I know he's working with a mental coach. I think he was saying like every other day or every 3 days or something like that, which is massive. And I think to the comments point, I think this is. If I was Lando and if I was in his position, this is your best chance to win a world championship. You don't know if it's going to happen next year. You just can't count your laurels in F1. You really don't know. Take everything you can and go to win this championship. You're not far off, Oscar. You're down in other aspects as well as points, maybe racecraft as well. But if it doesn't mean he can't do it. I think we could all admit, Nico was second fiddle to Lewis, and but he made it work. He was consistent. He did everything he could, and it's exactly Lando needs to take that as a source of inspiration. I mean, we all know Oscar's got a lot of talent, but require everything, push everything. If it means you retire after, like Nico did, at least you'll be a world champion at the end of it. So yeah.
There's a lot here, Ian. You might want to touch on this one. It's all Lando, really. How did McLaren miss this aspect of Lando's mindset issues? He's been there so long, so it feels like they missed that weakness and they should have identified it years ago. It's an interesting question. It's probably suggesting when you weren't fighting for a championship in all those other years, were they not cleaning up on those things, or did they not show up? And then now that they've showed up, is there anything McLaren can do to offer support, like in the team?
From the team perspective, I'm sure that they were aware that there were things that needed to be done, but if Lando Norris was not accepting of any of the ideas, then it would have been a very big challenge to do. And I think they're now, unfortunately, Lando is reaping the benefits, the disadvantages of choices he made some time ago. And so even if these things were not abundantly clear, and let's say that the team did ignore it, now you've got Oscar, who is clearly faster most of the time and is delivering. So what should Lando be thinking about from the technical perspective? He should be looking to get as close as possible to Oscar, so he forces the error from Oscar. At the moment, Oscar's not under pressure, so he can drive as he I'm sure he's very comfortable in the car doing what he's doing. But if he had Lando there really pushing him, then it might be a bit different.
Amir says, from the current F1 drivers, which ones do you think have pure talent above everybody else? Please try to list at least 3. Ermias, I'll just chip in here. Like, talent is not real, mate. Like, talent, okay, yes, to an extent, talent is real, but like the real value is when nature plus nurture, right? It's that big topic. Is it the nature or is it the nurture? Like, I don't know, Phillipe and Ian, I'd like to get your thoughts on this, but my philosophy is like, if you work hard enough, you'll win. Nico Rosberg's a perfect example of that. Ermias, you want to consider what happened in 2016. Everyone would argue, I mean, you would be disingenuous to argue that Nico's more talented than Lewis. Come 2016, it was Lewis was the talent, right? And Nico, as we just discussed, worked his backside off. So like, I don't like it when people say drivers are super talented. I'm like, but are they super hardworking? Are they super disciplined? Are they super motivated? Are they super in the detail? Are they super good under pressure? And are they super good in the rain? It doesn't matter if you're super talented. You've got to be also super dedicated. You've got to almost be obsessed in a way with driving. And Max in his spare time is the only one on the sim. And I said to Phillipe the other day, it's actually no wonder he's so far ahead of the rest of them, because while they're out doing X, Y, Z, he's just driving. He's just the driving machine, that guy. And so, like, I mean, to answer your question, if I had, like, how do you actually define the talent? Because they all came in at different stages of their career. They've all had worked with different teams and got different learnings from different people. And I mean, how do you say who's more talented? I mean, Max was very good, very young. So was Lewis. I guess those two, George as well. But they're all phenomenally hard workers. Lewis, Max, and George. They all work their backside off. Remember that reel, Phillipe? Maybe you want to talk on that one?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Martin, to be fair. I think, yes, there are obviously people with talent, but if you don't put in the hard work, then you're not going to get to where you need to get to. I think to answer the comments question, I think Max definitely comes to mind. I do think he is clearly super talented, but to your point, Martin, he works his butt off more than anyone else on that grid by the looks of it. I'd probably whack in Oscar maybe in there. I imagine, I don't know his kind of ins and outs, but I assume he puts it looks like he's putting in hard work, put it that way. So he's either super talented, no hard work, or he's putting in the hard work. And then I think for my third and final position, it kind of probably goes to, it's a bit of a cop out because I'm going to choose two, but Lewis and Fernando. I mean, I know they're kind of near their kind of end of their career, but both of them at the peak of their career, especially at the beginning, they were a force to be reckoned with. Just before, sorry, I was going to get Ian's thoughts as well on it. I just wanted to highlight the comments earlier question about the kind of mindset of Lando and what can McLaren do? Shouldn't they have done something before? I think this is the whole kind of point to what us three were talking about before, and about drivers being ashamed or scared, or F1 having that culture of not wanting that help. I think this is a big thing for me as a mindset professional and working with athletes. I noticed it quite early on in Lando. And at the beginning, like you said, when he wasn't fighting for championships, it didn't really hold much weight because ultimately it was just a couple of points here or there and it wasn't really leading to anything. But now it's been telling even since 2024, even before that. Look, there's a point that he has where he kind of takes it as it is and everything else. And he kind of like enjoys his life is probably the best way to put it, right outside the grid. But I think to what me and Martin spoke about last week, that's fine if you don't want to become an F1 champion. If you do and you want to put your name in with all the greats and be with all those guys up there, you've just got to cut this out. And this is something that, McLaren for sure should be doing. I mean, for me, Oscar definitely has a strong mindset, a stronger mindset out of the two for sure. But yeah, for Lando, I do kind of feel for him because he probably does need some support in that area. So feel free to reach out, Lando. I'm free. But no, of course, I think McLaren should be doing any support where possible to help him on that side. Yeah. So sorry, Ian, I'll throw it to you in terms of the question that the comment just passed on.
Okay, I'm pretty much in agreement with Martin that this thing about a supreme talent. I have an example of somebody who was viewed as the supreme talent. And you guys must have heard of Jan Magnussen, so Kevin's dad. So Jan Magnussen absolutely dominated F2, F3, wherever it was at that time, more so than anybody ever done. So the thought was he is going to be absolutely the best F1 driver. McLaren got him in, and then it started to go wrong. And so I did a little bit of work with Jan probably 6 or 7 years ago, and he was quite open about it. He said what went wrong was that he suddenly had all this money and fame, and it all went to his head. And he went out and enjoyed himself, and he didn't focus on the driving. And of course, he paid for it because the driving just didn't happen. And then in the end, he was dropped, and F1 lost somebody who could have been that super talent. So I'm kind of agreeing with Martin saying that there is nobody really that has that super talent. You've got to have that talent to start with, and all these drivers have it. It's how they develop it. How do they bring it to the table to deliver?
I think so. Let me play that Max clip. Give me a sec. I'll see if I can bring it up now.
See that red light? What? 7-time world champion, 4-time world champion.
I'm not sure if you guys caught that, but he goes, do you see that, by the way? 7-time world champion, 4-time world champion, first in the track. He was so proud of that, eh?
100%, and it talks for itself, right? It's the hard. I think, keeping it F1 as well. I think Logan Sargent is probably another one of those that can be classed as, to your point, Martin, in agreement that it's not all talent, right? He in the earlier Formula, Formula 3, Formula 2, he was doing amazing and great. I mean, I know the Williams wasn't the best at the start of 2024, but he's another one. I don't like. Again, I don't want to kind of throw any shade towards Logan Sargent because I don't know how much work he put in. I'm sure he did, but when he was coming up in Formula 2 and Formula 3, he was the guy to beat pretty much a lot of the time. So, and then he came into Formula 1, and it just shows talent can't push you over the edge. It's the hard work, the getting there early, the commitment, the dedication, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so have a think about this, that Red Bull second seat, they're always trying to put in the next talented driver. So Tsunoda's been there, Checo's been there, Albon's been there, Gasly's been there, Ricciardo's been there. If this doesn't show you that, because they're always just chucking a driver in and thinking, what's wrong? It's not working. That's because that driver that you've put in, he's not talented and he's not hardworking. So they're not, do you know what I mean? You've got, you need both, right? You need... what I'm trying to say is you've got to prepare that driver for that seat. You know what I'm saying? You can't just chuck them in. And this is the whole question now with Franco and Jack doing. Like, Jack wasn't performing, get rid of him. Maybe it's Franco. Franco's no good, get rid of him. Maybe Jack's better. And so then they just like, they're going to end up subbing these two drivers in, or perhaps bringing in a third one. But you guys know the underlying problem, right? It's the prep. It's the prep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would relate it further, and it's much of a wider problem than even it's just drivers. So, from an engineer's perspective, engineers need to have the technical skills, the interest, but the motivation, the drive to really make it happen. And the guys that get to the top are generally the guys who do work very hard, and you can't get away with just turning up and hoping that it's going to happen for you as an engineer. So it is exactly the same as a driver. Obviously, an engineer, you have a little bit of access to engineering coaching and so on, but really the drivers have got the money, the position to get this really done to a very high level. So it's just a microcosm. Exactly the same problems for all of us that go to work.
Ian, I wanted to get your input actually on this channel, because I've spoken for the longest time about the McLaren's anti-dive, and we're just going to change topic a little bit here. I've spoken for a while about McLaren's anti-dive and the feeling or lack thereof that it's giving to Lando. And I've said, well, Lando's hands are actually too quick. The way he turns into the corner is enough to just overpower the rear of the car and make him not be able to predict. You've got to remember, every time you push anything, you're making a prediction for how much grip there is. Every time you push the brakes at turn 1, you're like, I don't know, maybe it's the right place, maybe it's the right amount of pressure, maybe it's the right timing, and the same with the steering and the same with the throttle and everything else. So when Lando turns in, I've always thought that his hands are a little bit too quick and he has to second guess that. They've made a change here to give Lando more feel. Talk to me about this change. What is it? Is more feel what he needs? And is it helping in your opinion? Like what do you think they could have done to give Lando more feel in the front?
Okay, so if I start with what anti-dive is doing for you. So many years ago, you could play around with anti-dive and you probably wouldn't go above 50%. So this is the ratio of the load that goes through the suspension arms versus the load that goes through the push rod or pull rod and into the rocker and into the damper assembly. So ideally you don't want any anti-dive for a pure handling car, but because these are heavily aero cars, you need to do something. So you need to have some anti-dive. Now, what are the problems of anti-dive? So if you keep on adding more and more anti-dive, then you end up with a car where the driver can't feel what's happening. Because the loads go through the arms, there's no damping involved, it's bang, 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 all the time, it's just noise. So I don't know how on earth they'd judge it. Now, when they moved from the cars before 2022 to the current cars, the tyres became much lower profile, so then the tyres were doing less compared to the big bulbous tyres that we had forever basically in F1. So the tyres in the old days dominated what happened because the tyres had that much compression in them, so your suspension wasn't doing very much. Nowadays the suspension does a bit more and the tyre does a bit less. So what do you want to do about that? You need the whole anti-dive thing to, because otherwise you're going to see the weight transfer will make the front dip too low. When the front dips too low, you get greater ground effect. That pulls the front down even further, and then you start to get the whole porpoising, the car's very difficult to drive, and so on and so on. So in the case of McLaren, I don't know what they've actually done, because the detail of these things is where you would have a kinematics package and so on. And anybody who comes up with drawings like this, yeah, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. To me, you either do it properly or you don't do it. So to do it properly means you need a kinematics package, and that is generally written. So it's basically a set of connecting spheres, and they overlap and so on. In the end of all the calculations, you calculate where every component could possibly move, how it moves when you think together, and then from that you can determine anti-dive, anti-squat, pro-squat, kinematic, caster, trail, and so on. All these numbers come out, and there are some other very important ones that come out, which are to do with the movement of the damper, because that's the bit that you really want to control. So, in a quick summary, what do you want to do about it? You need to give the driver more feel, so you would do that via either changing the caster to trail, or you might try reducing the anti-dive. There aren't many options available to them. If they've changed the suspension, then they're probably going for a little bit less anti-dive. And it's always a tough balance. How far do you go with anti-dive? Because of exactly the reasons we're talking about. And the only way you can work that out is by modelling, driver in the loop simulator, modelling, driver in the loop simulator, and eventually you try it at the track. But because the rules were quite a big change, then it's actually quite difficult to do, and so you're going to have to learn by experience. And there'll be some tracks where the anti-dive that they have is too much, and there'll be other tracks where it's actually okay. I mean, in the wet, it's not a problem because you don't brake hard, so you'll never feel what's going on there. Monaco, very bumpy. You want to have better ride quality than you would with other circuits, so you really don't want to have high anti-dive. You don't need it, so you wouldn't have it. So a lot of factors there, and yes, from a vehicle performance perspective, you can do all of this and you can work it out, and that's the job of these guys that do it. And generally, I'd say they do it very well.
So the tracks you've mentioned, Monaco and wet, Lando's won pretty much all of them except for the one on the weekend. He won Melbourne in the wet, he poled it and won it in Monaco, and he won Silverstone in the wet as well. So is there some sort of correlation there maybe?
Maybe there is. Yeah, I mean, it's logical for me that there would be some correlation there.
That's interesting.
But I don't know whether anybody else has discussed this before, and I suspect that McLaren are happy to go waffle as opposed to say what they've actually done, because they don't want to tell anybody else what they're doing.
Yeah, the car's got a machine amount of front grip, and come long corners like Hungary this weekend, Netherlands this weekend, it's going to be a smashing. I'm going to put out a poll actually in my live stream tomorrow, which is going to say, how far up the grid do you think McLaren will lap? Because I think they'll be lapping 20th, 19th, 18th, 17th. I think with the long corners around Hungary, which you guys know, my 7 technical corners, that long corner of constant radius, of which there are 4 in Hungary, is going to be like, that's the natural habitat for the MCL39, is it not?
Certainly is. The other key thing there, which is something that I talk about from the technical perspective, is making it so that the car handles the change of direction, because you have quite a few changes of direction, and they are quite difficult for the car to manage, because you're effectively asking the car to go from that point of roll over to that point of roll. So you've got a large time frame. Yeah, obviously it's very small in terms of the real world, but for an F1 car, the car is changing direction, and that slowness does cause problems. So you do need to get the centre of gravity as low as possible. You need the centre of gravity at the rear of the car to be as low as possible. I mean, there are many things that you need to do to make a car work like that.
Just to bookend the topic, question from Max says, Max Flashart here says, is strong anti-dive and curbs incompatible? So does it mean they're not ride curbs well?
it won't. It's not so easy one to answer, because if you want to ride curbs, then you want downforce. It's that simple. Yes, you can play around with a bit with ride, but you're playing in that area. Anti-dive will make it a bit worse, but because it's such a violent event, it's not about driver feel. He can't feel what's going on because it's crash and you're through the curb. What matters is the time that you're in contact with the track. So how quickly does the car come back down? Which is why I say downforce. It is king here. Really is the most important thing. So if you're entering the corner too low a speed, then you don't have the downforce, therefore your curb strike's going to be worse. So you want to be coming in, which may relate to some of the things that you talk about from a driver perspective, how you want to go through a corner better through curbs.
There's things you can do on both sides. Obviously, it's driver-car combination, isn't it? So more downforce from your side and unloading of inside front from my side, like we spoke about in Imola a lot as well. Phillipe, you had a few things there you wanted to talk about with Oscar and Lando, their mental warfare potentially that's bubbling away in the background. You've got some points here, how they spoke about themselves on the media day, the frostiness in the cool down room. I spoke about this post-race and I said, Lando got out of the car, he saw Oscar and I don't want to go over to him. You know, there was a bit of that and I could read this straight through the helmet. Source, trust me. he saw Oscar and he was like, not doing it, not going to. Eventually they ran into each other, of course. But I just thought that was a bit strange. So what insight have you got for us there?
Yeah, completely. I'm guessing you guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so you can see the little boxing gloves I've got at the top. Ding, ding, ding. Ring your bells. It's Lando v Oscar. I saw your point, and I'm gonna end on that point as well. We obviously know it's heating up between these two. I put out a video on my socials, and if you haven't seen, go check it out, because it shows basically the media day, so the Thursday before the Grand Prix. It shows both Oscar and Lando side to side talking about their views coming into this Grand Prix. And I'll start with Lando. So the momentum was on Lando, right? He won Silverstone, obviously due to the penalty. He won the previous GP before Silverstone as well. Momentum in any sport is good. Momentum in any profession is good, right? And I think this kind of goes back to what me and Martin spoke about last week about Lando minimizing any pressure on himself. Look, I totally get it. In my early days, would I be someone who kind of wants to, reject any momentum talk and therefore minimize the pressure? Yeah. But I think, when I was like 15, 16, yeah, because you're still kind of unaware of what you're actually doing, which is just kind of pushing it to the side and not really dealing with it head on. I think for me, there's a stark contrast between the two of them, and I'll kind of go to that. So for me, if I was coaching Lando, I'd be like, you've got momentum on your side. Use that. Don't allow that pressure to kind of overcome you. Use that pressure as a privilege. You're in a great spot. You're in the best car, probably one of the most dominant cars ever. Use that. You can put the pressure now on your teammate. And this goes to, again, what me and Martin spoke about last week in regards to, is there any way Lando can kind of win any mental points on Oscar? And this was to my point. I said that the kind of momentum is with Lando. As long as Lando focuses on himself and just improves on the track, it's naturally going to put a bit of mental pressure on Oscar, because then he's playing catch up. He's the one that has to risk. He's the one that has to, take the later braking and whatnot. And that can cause a problem on the track and it becomes technical. Lando made a big point. I know it's kind of like a semi-home Grand Prix for him with his mom being Belgian, but it was the way he kind of responded to the weather. I mean, you guys will be able to speak more on this, but I mean, British drivers, we get rain here constantly. And I know, somewhere in Europe, like Belgium, I know it rains a lot as well. So, but
what did he say?
Lando,
what did he say? Yeah.
So the question came up about, there could be some weather, some rain. And it was more his body language as well as the way he said it. He really shrugged it off. He was like, "Oh, I'm not looking forward to it." Again, I'm ad-libbing, can't remember specifically what he said, but he just wasn't a fan of the weather and he wasn't looking forward to it. And that for me just speaks volumes from a mindset perspective on, you're already saying, no momentum on me, minimize the pressure. But when they're bringing up the weather, you can't control the weather. It's coming. dude, deal with it. Don't try and throw it off and say, oh, I don't really. You're putting out excuses there early on to say, this is why I can't win, or this is why this isn't going to happen. Forget that. It is what it is. You can't change it. You've got a great car. You've got a great team. Work with them to do the best as you can. If I conversely go to Oscar here, we've got him dancing in his Australian flag.
On that, one sec, Phillipe, if I can just comment on that. Whenever it's wet under the safety car and they're doing laps, do you notice how all the world champions are like, it's fine, let's go racing? and then Lando was like, the visibility is not great for me behind the safety car. I can only imagine what it's like. All the world champions, all the guys from the streets, all the guys that get it done when they're not feeling well, when it's raining, this and that, in adverse conditions, all those guys, Hamilton, Verstappen, they're all like, let's get going, what we're aiming for is, I'm built 100%. For this sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. And this goes to your, I think it was the show you did after the Grand Prix, basically, where you spoke about it. And I am in complete and utter agreement. I think we should have had a standing start. We didn't need a rolling start. It's almost like they heard Lando on the comms and thought, okay, yeah, we need to kind of do something about this. But I completely agree. Look, we have wet tires in F1 for a reason. Honestly, use them. And, these guys are built for it. Like, this is what they train for. We're watching. Yes, it brings excitement. And to your point, if no one's seen, Martin's show, go watch it. Because I don't want to take too many points of what he said. But a point you said, Martin, was, yes, there is a danger aspect, but there's obviously an entertainment aspect of it. And it's a fine balance. These are, the so-called 20 best drivers in the world. They can handle it. Yes, there's going to be a few crashes, but this is also why we watch F1. We like them being on the limit. We like to see things that these drivers do that we can't do, and that's a massive point. But I agree, and to that point, I saw a great little video of Max tapping Lewis on the back after. I would love to just be a fly on that helmet, hearing what those two probably talked about. But yeah, I agree. But yeah, sorry, going back. So I think with Oscar, again, this is in the video that I shared on socials, but the momentum wasn't with him. Obviously, results had gone against him. Could it have been for a silly mistake under that safety car in Silverstone that cost him the win? I'm sure he'll learn from it. But what I really, really liked from a mindset perspective from Oscar was he was sticking to the plan. Really, despite those recent results, he had a really good positive outlook. He kind of mentioned, the results aren't going his way, but the plan was that he's been driving well. He knew like everything with the team is good. Everything's all good. It was just, sometimes these things don't go your way, and that's going to happen. And that's a big thing from a mindset perspective where I work with my clients. But this goes for anyone out there who's listening. You can't dictate the results. You could put in all that hard work. You could have all this talent, and you could have all this mindset coaching that doesn't always dictate you're going to increase your results. But what it does increase is your chances. And that's what I really liked from Oscar, is that, yes, it hasn't gone his way, but he wasn't giving up. He was sticking to it. He was looking forward. And he also mentioned that Spa was his favorite track. And this goes to your point, Martin, about how they were able to jump on the track and smash out a lap record there and everything else. But again, it was just really, if I was a neutral listening to this, I've never heard F1, but I've got my mindset kind of head on. I wouldn't think those two are in the same car, like knowing that they're obviously driving the exact same car. For me, Oscar's, you wouldn't even think the momentum was with Oscar. You would think the momentum was with Oscar rather. Just judging by the way that he spoke, he was very positive. He had a great outlook. And I do think that's why, again, I'm going to pass to you guys and you can talk about the vehicle performance and the technical side. But from a mindset side, it was so telling that Oscar was going to win this race almost regardless. I know Lando did great to get it on pole, but I mean, lap one, as soon as that pretty much we went racing on Sunday, it was clear as day for me. Even if it wasn't lap one, he was going to make it happen at some point. And it was kind of telling at the end of the race with Oscar on more worn tyres, more used tyres. A couple of mistakes were coming Lando's way, and you can blame the weather or that. It's not his favourite track, but he was making silly mistakes on, locking up in turn one and everything else. Whereas, yes, Oscar may have made mistakes, but it wasn't costing him a second or, a couple of tenths. It was costing him a few. So, that was just my take. But I'd love to know your point, Ian, on from a vehicle performance side as well, and your experience of working in these top teams of like inter-team battles and everything else. And is there talk? I mean, I heard Lando talking and Oscar probably as well talking a lot about they look at each other's data. So from your experience as well, have you ever seen it get a bit frosty, but also drivers when they're in a battle, looking at each other's data and trying to pick up anything that they can.
With Lewis and Nico, yes, and in the end they stopped each other looking at each other's data. And I mean, I'm not sure that I think it's that important to do that. I think you focus on yourself, and the kind of analysis that I've done over the years, we started doing this in 2003, where you look at the on-car videos and you compare how each driver is attacking something and so on, and you correlate that with time, and then you can work out where drivers are losing and where they're gaining. And it's those bigger things that you need to get together and understand. You don't need the detail of driver A presses the throttle exactly here and driver B does it there, and therefore driver A must do it. So I don't see that the level of data obsession that some people seem to have is important at all, really. I think that
I agree.
The important bit is the complication of how the big management deal with the conflicts that will occur. And Mclaren seem to have struggled at times with the papaya rules and so on. Whereas if you have someone strong like Toto Wolff, then he can generally keep it under control. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that in there. There's one point I wanted to bring up was going back to the whole performance thing. When you look at what happened in Spa during the race, Oscar was just disappearing. He was so much better than anybody else. Yes, he's first, so yes, he's at the front. Yes, but he was so much quicker than everybody else, and he left Lando. So, and that's why he's able to do what he did at the end on the worn tyres. And I think a lot of this comes back to that resilience. He is tough in that area. He knows, just as you say, stick with the plan. He's quite resilient, so he just keeps on going, bish, 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 bash, and that's it. I mean, it's very good to see. Very good to see. He's very consistent.
It's a very straightforward mentality, isn't it? Very straightforward motor racing. There's a question that's come through that says, have you guys considered the F1 young guys are like friends, and that, you know, you don't see Max, Lewis, Alonso or others get inside their mind and they're not like super friendly, go out to dinner, etc. Ian, back in your day, like, given that we're just comparing that generation, Lewis, Alonso, and he's written Max in there as well, but Max is obviously, comes back to my whole point. It's the champions aren't what they do, it's what they don't do. And that's where it's the big, because everyone's wondering, like, what do these guys do that makes them so special? And when you frame the question like that, you're looking at it the wrong way. It's not about what they do. It's what they chop out of their life. But the question is more like, what do you make of the whole friends, drivers being friends? Is that fine? Is it not fine? You know, is there competitive advantage to be gained? And what was it like when you were there, Ian?
No, I'd go back as far as David Coulthard, who was never going to be champion. He was quick, but he's never going to be the champion. And Jacques Villeneuve, they were very good friends and they'd fly to the circuits together and so on. But Jacques was always going to be the guy who was faster, who had it in his head to win. I mean, there are stories of other drivers sharing flights and so on later on, but in the end, all the drivers could end up buying their own jets anyway, so it didn't really matter. I'm trying to think of another example that's really relevant.
Can I just add to what you mentioned about Villeneuve as well, because he is a great question as well, and he recently came out and said basically the exact same thing, which is what has happened. Like, before, we used to have, you know, competitors who not hated each other, but they certainly weren't friends. I think I think it's a great question, and I think it kind of goes to what we were saying as well last week. Is, I don't want to call this kind of new kind of younger drivers soft or whatever, and always social media and everyone's all friendly. I love sport to watch sport for the sake of, I mean, everyone kind of loved 2021. I mean, yeah, that might depend on who you were supporting and whatnot, but take all that out and who won, that was such an intense season, right? And them going at each other Christian Horner and Toto throwing handbags at one another. It was every step of the way. And I think you want that, right? I kind of, from a neutral perspective, you want to see that. And I also think, again, this depends on kind of the person and the minerals that person's got. If Lando and Oscar really went at it and really, you know, kind of every little inch they could take, whether it was mentally, physically, whether it was, taking longer in a room so that someone, I heard once when Michael Schumacher, this is, when he was Nico's teammate, that he used to stay in the toilet and stay there for as long as possible until he had to go out for qualifying so that Nico couldn't take a leak before qualifying, making him feel more, uncomfortable while driving the car. And it just speaks to, someone of Michael's level's competitiveness. Yes, you can, say it's like mind games and childish and whatnot. But I think it kind of goes to the whole aspect of, if let's take it from Lando's point, because we know Oscar's more mentally strong. If Lando, started to just, throw little kind of grenades Oscar's way, is it going to play with Oscar, right? And I think we need that competitiveness back. It brings out, even from a physical, a tactical perspective, it brings so much more out. Because if that was me, I'd feel the pressure. So I'd probably speak to you, Ian. I'd speak to you, Martin, saying, listen, I want to destroy this guy. He's putting everything on me. The pressure's now on me, guys. Give me everything, right? So what's your thoughts on that, Martin? Do you think we should bring back that competitive spirit?
Like, part of me is saying no. Part of me is saying, like, at the end of the day, and this is weird. This is one of the first times I've kind of said, like, if you kind of know me and you had to predict what answer I'd say, I'd be like, no, sack that off. Don't be friends. This is probably the only one where I'm going to be like, I think it's important in a way to be friends, because when it's all said and done, and particularly for the Hamilton-Rosberg thing, I'd like to think that they can reconnect and have a laugh about 2016 and whatever. Do you know what I mean? I'd like to think that they can still have that relationship and work things out. I think it's actually really important that the friendship is maintained. And even if it's done in the slight dodgy / disrespectful, like a Vettel, Mark Webber kind of, those guys are still kind of like, Mark looks at him with a bit of a, I don't forget what you did to me, but then they still kind of muck around a little bit when they see each other as well. There needs to be still that humanity aspect, I think, as well. It just depends to what level you're going to. Like with the Rosberg Hamilton one, it was Rosberg's. He was pulling at everything possible to win that championship, everything possible. And if it meant that the relationship suffered, the relationship will suffer. I'm taking home the crown, baby. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it had to be that. But I'd also think that probably from Nico's side, he'd be open to, Nico's moved on now. It's been years since 2016. So he's nearly been retired 10 years. It's gone so quick. I'd like to think that they can make it up, but maybe that's not the correct advice either. Maybe the correct advice is, this is your competition. Never, you should never be friends with them. Don't let them show any of your weaknesses. And it should be, and I just think life's kind of too short for that. If you can't get it done with all of the other tools that you have, you don't need to defriend the person. Whether or not it gets too chummy and too close, that's another story. You guys are hanging out and playing golf. That's when I'm like, no, this is bullshit. Like, this has got to stop, right? But to the extent that they're just friends, I think it's fine. What do you reckon, Ian?
Well, I think that there are many of the drivers do live in Monaco, and it's a bit of a difficult place to avoid people. So I suspect that they are thrown together, and so they try and make the most of it and enjoy each other's company. But yeah, from a pure performance perspective, I'm not convinced that's the best thing to do. And I agree completely. Going out and having a round of golf and then paddle ball or something, it's just, no, don't go there. Focus on what you need to do to win.
Yeah, if you want to be a good golf player, play golf. If you want to be a good Formula One driver, like it would be other things, right? Surely it wouldn't be. Trisha, I'll just bring up your comment there. It's not a bad one. It says Lando maximizes external forces and doesn't focus on internal forces that he can control. Oscar is the opposite. Phillipe, have you got a thought there on the external versus the internal? I mean, there are so many comments on my channel that are like, Lando worries about everything he can't control, and that takes away from the things that he can control.
Yeah, bang on. Literally, you took the words out of my mouth, and your comments bang on, right? In a nutshell, to keep it brief, I think 100% Lando, it goes to what I mentioned when I was sharing a screen and the video I posted on social, is that, the weather's going to come, and yes, you can't control the weather, so just accept it, right? Control what you can do, which is change your driving style. I don't know. You'd work with a mental coach to prepare for that. He's not a stranger to kind of rain and wet weather and winning in wet weather. Clearly, like you mentioned, Melbourne, Silverstone, and it's just clear as day for me. Oscar is someone who's like, all right, it is what it is. I can't control everything, but what I can control is what I do. So whatever's going to come my way, we'll deal with it then. Yeah, has he had slip ups? Of course, yeah, but he's definitely having a lot less slip ups. So I think, yeah, great point, and I totally agree with that comment.
Jake makes a comment here. I'll just bring it up and get your thoughts on this one, Ian. Nico actually looked like he wanted to approach Lewis on the grid at Spa this weekend, but Lewis lowered his umbrella and wanted no part of it. Does that sound like something Lewis would do?
Yeah, I mean, Lewis always was very focused, and he's not an easy guy to talk to in the factory when you're doing stuff. It's just not that easy. I mean, for example, when he's on the simulator, it's whinge, and actually he is at the racetrack as well. So this is typical of how he works: is whinge, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and then bang, qualifying. Wow, whack! Suddenly you get the super lap in, and he's on pole from a car that was absolutely a dog 15 minutes ago, and he can't deal with. So, I mean, so as a more general point, again, because I try and relate it to everything, and it ends up with a question for you, Phillipe. But so what I'm seeing is a lot of the things we're talking about here relate very much to everybody. So how you focus on, how you fix your own problems, how you do things at work. You need to deal with the things that you can action, the things that you can control, and leave all the other things alone because you can't. It's outside of your control. So it's back to building resilience. It's about being able to deal with it. But it's the wider picture of these things, I think, and you're the expert. I'm just interpreting this information. So is that a reasonable interpretation?
Yeah, bang on, literally. I think it goes to the comments point. I think the name was Trisha. I think it's literally, I mean, there's a plethora of other things, but as a whole, and I think this is what really affects, the F1 drivers, and it affects us in our daily life and affects people that are listening. I think just such a great switch in your head is, we can always sit here and complain and say, the weather's bad, or, something else like my battery on my phone's gone, or you can just keep listing something that's always going to be a problem. But it's just a victim mentality of saying, oh well, this is why it didn't go right for me. And we see that a lot in Lando, to kind of bring it back to the grid. And I think you're only beating yourself up. You're not helping yourself. I'm not saying that your mindset's going to sit there and just win it solely on your mindset. Obviously there's tactical, technical, physical, as we've mentioned previously, but the mindset, you're with your brain all the time. You're with your thoughts all the time. So you want to analyze those thoughts and make sure they're reinforcing a positive belief in you and helping you build up. And I think Oscar is a great example. Max, I've talked about, is a great example. I think even to your point, Martin, here, where you talked about would Lewis kind of do that by lowering his umbrella type thing. I think Lewis is a very, very, very fierce competitor when he's on the track. And whether or not it's Nico from 10 years ago or whatever, I think we see it all the time, right? He has his AirPods in, he's not really listening, he doesn't mind kind of being alone. I just think I wouldn't put it past him, because he's probably thinking, do you know what, forget this, I want to focus solely on the race. And it goes back to what you can control, to Ian's point of, look, if Lewis takes off his headphones, does he really want to get distracted bringing up 2016 drama? Probably not. His focus is on the track, and it showed, right? He did so many great takeovers at the beginning of that GP. So yeah, I think to the question, Ryan, I'm not sure what your thoughts are as well, but I can probably see Lewis doing that for the sake of focus.
But I love what you said in our first podcast about diet. And you said diet is not just the food you consume. Diet is the music you consume, the people you consume, the thoughts you consume, the things it's diet is like anything that comes into your internals in any way, shape or form. That's such an interesting way to look at diet. And I've never heard that before. So perhaps you can maybe elaborate on that piece a little bit more. It's the first I've heard of it, but it makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely. I think, it's just one of those things, and you can, again, this goes for everyone. It doesn't need to be F1. It doesn't need to be tennis, whatever. This goes for everyone doing your 9 to 5, doing what you do. it's a snowball effect, and it's not going to just turn around in one day, right? But if you kind of sit there, so where to start is you kind of just want to analyze everything you're doing. So what do you watch? Who do you speak to? What do you listen to? And when you kind of note those things down and start to analyze it, you might be like, okay, do you know what? I spent 2 hours watching some crap on Netflix. Okay, great. You might have needed downtime, but what was it on Netflix? Was it, I don't
Drive to
know,
Survive.
like something? Yeah, right. Is it consumed with drama, right? Because we have mirror neurons, so you'll pick up on what you're watching, and this is why there's a great saying, which is you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. We're actually completely blessed in our day and age that we have mobile phones and the internet. Yes, it can be detrimental, but just to kind of use that phrase of you're the average of the 5 people. You can stop spending time with everyone, become a loner, but your phone can be that tunnel to someone you do want to spend time with. So if that is, you want to bodybuild, so you want to listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger, you can just dictate your whole algorithm on YouTube, Twitter, whatever it may be, listening to Arnold, listening to his motivation, looking at the physical reps that he does. And it just goes back to that diet point. So analyze what you're doing. What kind of music are you listening to? Classical music has got scientific research to prove that if you listen to it while you sleep, it helps your brain waves and everything else, helps you calm down. Or you're listening to, again, no shade on anyone that listens to heavy metal rock, because I do have my time of listening to Ozzy Osbourne and guys like that, and everything else, Guns N' Roses and whatnot. But are you listening to that a bit too much, and is that having an effect on your mental state? Have you watched something and picked up? There's another thing as well of you'll pick up habits of people that you are spending time with, and that goes for whether they're good or bad. And the scary thing is, this has happened to me previously. You won't even know it until you do it, or until someone calls you out, unless you're very self-aware. And I picked this up a lot. I've lived with people when I was at uni, or when I lived away from home, and I just started to pick up certain mannerisms that weren't me. And innately, it doesn't feel right with you, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. It's just because you're spending time with a lot of these people. So my advice is to anyone out there who's kind of going through something but kind of wants to switch it around, analyze everything you're doing, make notes of it, and just stick to a plan of actually making a change. So if you are watching something like Netflix and it is drama filled, replace it with something. YouTube is full of free documentaries or free education. If you're interested in coding, go listen to that. If you're interested in mindset, come listen to me. If you're interested in F1, listen to Martin and Ian. There's so much stuff out there. So just start to turn around those things. Start to spend less time with people that are bringing you down. Spend more time with, it might not be real life people, it might be YouTube, but spending time listening to that, hearing that, speaking that, and practice it. So stop putting out negativity and just take that, couple of seconds to take that breath in and just react with positivity, react with love rather than negativity. So anyone who's listening, try that, and let me know in the comments how you get on.
Ian, Phillipe, it's been a pleasure. Thanks you guys for coming on and sharing your thoughts. I think we covered a lot of ground in this live stream. So thank you for joining. Thank you everyone in the audience for your questions as well. We'll try to do these from time to time as well. It's tricky to get Ian on here. He's got to get set up, So we'll try to get him back. And look, I do want to definitely dive in a little bit more, because I'm sure Ian's got a lot of stories that he wants to tell with us. I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream as well. If you did, on your way out, please give the video a thumbs up. Drop another question if you had it and we didn't answer it in the comments section below. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Thursday live stream. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys then.